Hello all, welcome to the Security Tube GNU Debugger Expert course and certification. In this video, we will look at how to break an iPhone application using GDB. Now if you need the slides, the application, all of that, you can either tweet this video or you can register for the Sgde for just $50 and get high quality video downloads, mock exam, the certification exam, and finally an e-copy of the certificate if you pass the exam. Okay, so iPhone applications traditionally have been just as vulnerable to piracy as desktop applications have. Now a lot of developers do common checks for things like jailbreaking, simply because you can only pirate and use iOS applications if you have a jailbroken iPhone. Now let me give you an example about what I mean. Now I have created an application using the iOS SDK and their entire framework and all of that stuff. It's a simple application and all it does is it checks if the iPhone is jailbroken. So I click Am I pirated? This is running in the iOS simulator inside Xcode, which is their IDE, and it says the phone is not jailbroken. Now I have a jailbroken application in here. Let me kind of open it up. Here is my jailbroken iPhone, and when I go ahead and run the same demonstration, so if you notice it's the same application but on a real phone, and I click on Am I pirated, it clearly says that this phone is jailbroken, pirates, right? Now what we really want is to use GDB somehow and to disable the jailbreaking check or to break the jailbreaking check, right? Once you can do that through GDB, you can apply some sort of a patch to the application to permanently disable it, right? So let's get started. Now a lot of the stuff which I'm actually going to be talking about here is based on the Security Tube iOS Security Expert course and certification which we've just launched. Now this talks in depth about iOS application auditing and the iOS platform security. And if you're interested, I would highly recommend that you can go ahead and check out securitytube-training.com and sign up for this course. So I'll probably be picking up a lot of bits of knowledge here and there which may be new to you if you've probably never looked at iOS applications before. So please bear with me. And second, if you do not own an iPhone or an iOS device which is jailbroken, you unfortunately cannot run this demo as well, in which case again you can have a look at the video demo and get a feel for how this is done. Okay, now what I've done is I've connected my jailbroken iPhone to my Mac, right, and I've created what is really called a USB MUX based tunnel through which I can connect to my phone. So let me go ahead, connect to my phone, which I already have, and basically all I'm doing is just SSHing into the phone, right, using USB MUX-T. Let me figure out all the applications which are running on the phone at this point. And if you notice, this is where my anti-piracy demo.app is running with process ID 3410. Fantastic. Now to begin analyzing this, I need to have some idea about the class files. So I'm going to go ahead to the application directories, and I'm going to go ahead and find the one where my anti-piracy demo application is stored, which is this one. And here I am, right? And I'm going to use class dump z to dump all the class information. Now if you're interested, as I said shamelessly, the Security Tube iOS Security Expert talks about all of this stuff in great detail. Okay, so what I really want is application delegate. This is the protocol part, if you notice down below, I'm interested in basically the interface. Here it is, and I can clearly see we have a view controller. View controller class is of type anti-piracy view controller, and inside this view controller's implementation I have a UI label called piracy verdict. I think that's the place where we do the printing, and there seems to be a method called isJailbroken which returns a boolean. Fantastic, right? So this is what we are going to use. Let me open up another SSH terminal. SSH into my phone. Again, now I'm going to use GDB and attach to my process, which is the jailbroken test application. Oops, I think I'm going to have to find that again. GDB-p 3410. Here you go, I'm attaching to it. This takes a bit of time. Okay, awesome. Now, based upon what we've uncovered in the class information, what I really want is to set a breakpoint whenever the isJailbroken function is being called, right? So here is how I'm going to do it. I'm going to take the anti-piracy view controller. I'm going to say break. This is basically class method, so I'm going to use a minus, and then is jailbroken. There you go. I have my breakpoint set. Let me continue running the application. So here is how my application is running. And now I'm going to click mi pirated once again. And once that happens, the isJailbroken method is going to be called and we're going to hit the breakpoint. There you go. I've run it. The app is frozen in between and we've hit the breakpoint. Let me do a quick disassembly. So make this screen font a little bit smaller so we can see more data. Here it is. Now, again, all of this is based on what I've taught in the course, and really it's not possible for me to condense a 6 to 7 hour course inside a short video like this one. But basically all the message passing, which is, the specific class method, etc. being called, is all encapsulated inside the Object-C message sends, right? Okay. Now, there are two ways to do it. One is where you can hook up to all the Object-C message sends and then figure out the different arguments and figure out the one which we are interested in. And the other way really is to go ahead and basically hook into the place where isJailbroken returns. So if I do a BT, if you notice, anti-piracy view controller check piracy is what in turn is calling isJailbroken, and that's the place where we can hook in as well, right? So let's try and do it both ways. So first let's go ahead and find out the place where we are doing the check for isJailbroken, right? You have to ensure that the application is always in the foreground and that the phone is never really going into the sleep mode. Okay, now let me go ahead and disassemble, and now we're going to set breakpoints for each of these Object-C message sends, right? Let me take this one up here. Let me set the breakpoint for the next one. Now, the reason why you do not want to set a general breakpoint for Object-C message send is really because you could have each of these methods in turn calling other methods and stuff like that, and this whole thing could just explode if you tap in to Object-C message send. Rather, it's much easier to tap in exactly to the place where Object-C message send is being invoked inside isJailbroken, right? Unless you really want to kind of go deeper and see what else is happening. Okay, so we got the one at 68 and here is the final one. There you go. Let's continue running the application. We've hit the first breakpoint, breakpoint 2 here. Now it's an interesting way by which we can look at what's there. So this is basically not too interesting to us. We are looking at the different methods being called. Alloc is basically just memory allocation, so we can skip this breakpoint. Now we've hit breakpoint 3. Again, init with format is basically a method in Objective-C to kind of initialize things like strings, NSS string and all of that. Let's continue. Default manager, again not too useful. Aha, file exists at path. This is interesting because this is checking for a specific file, whether it exists or not on the phone, right? And if you've done a little bit of research on, how jailbreaking tests work, a lot of times they try to check for specific files which may only exist if the phone is jailbroken, right? Now what we want to do is look at the argument of file exists at path to know which file it is checking for, and always remember the phone needs to be running and the application needs to be in the foreground. The way in which you can find that is basically by printing out the object. PO is especially for Objective-C based applications where PO is print object $R2, and basically this is checking for private var lib apt. Now if you remember, we said iPhone is basically an ARM based application, an ARM based system, and hence the return value of any method or anything is going to be in R0, right? Similar to what we've seen in the previous video inside Ubuntu RMLE, Debian RMLE. So now I'm going to go back here to this breakpoint, which is 384, which is exactly this place in here, and I'm going to set a breakpoint for the next statement, right? And just continue. We hit breakpoint 6. Now if I do info registers at this point, what I would find is the value of R0 is set to 1, right? Which means the file exists at path seems to be returning a Boolean true. Now what we really want to do is make the return value set to false, so that file exists at path basically says no, the file doesn't exist. So we're going to do that very easily by setting R0 to the value 0. Do a quick info registers to verify that. Yes, we've set it to 0. And now what we can do is we can continue running the program. So have a look at the screen at this point, right? And if you notice, now it says the phone is not jailbroken. Fantastic, right? So this is how, using runtime manipulation and figuring out the return values from different methods being called, we can change what happens in the application. Now let me actually go ahead and do it the second way at this point. So let's actually exit this application and attach to it once again, right? So the app seems to be still running. And if you kind of remember, based on what we had seen, check piracy seemed to be the place which we were now interested in, right? Because check piracy in turn was calling is jailbroken when we did BT. So I'm going to set a breakpoint for anti-piracy view controller, check piracy. That's the place we are interested in. So I'm going to set a breakpoint here. Check piracy. There we go. Set the breakpoint. Now because check piracy basically has an argument, we actually use little colon here, right? Now what we're going to do is continue running it. Go to the phone and I'm going to click on am I jailbroken again or am I pirated again, right? Freezes, the check is still happening. The output you see the phone is not jailbroken is really from the previous run which we just did. Now let me do a disassemble, and if you notice we have a bunch of things happening here. Now what I really want is this time on, let me go ahead and allow it to run as is so that we get that this phone is jailbroken as an error. So let me continue, and if you notice it says this phone is jailbroken, right? Now let me click am I pirated again. I've clicked it, we hit the breakpoint. Now let's do our magic. So what we really want to find is the point where check piracy is in turn going to call is jailbroken. So at this time the method name we are interested in is jailbroken, right? Now let's tap into the Objective-C message send calls here. So this is the first place. Let's take this one. Let me add a breakpoint here. Let me locate the second place. Seems to be pretty much only one place. Fantastic. Let me continue running. We've hit the breakpoint, and if I do an x/s $r1, if you notice, this is exactly the place where we are sending a message to anti-piracy view controller is jailbroken, right? Which means the return value R0 is what we are interested in. So let's set a breakpoint for the next statement. Continue, we hit the breakpoint, info registers, and is jailbroken of course would return a 1 based on the file check which we saw previously. The file exists at path or whatever that was, if you kind of recall from what we'd seen previously here. File exists at path. Okay, so all I'm going to do is set the return value from anti-piracy view controller is jailbroken to 0 once again. So set $r0 equals 0, right? And I'm going to hit continue, and you can keep looking at the screen. There you go. Now it says the phone is not jailbroken, right? Fantastic. So this is how using GDB you can do all of these interesting things. The next level, of course, to figure out the appropriate place where the different checks or comparisons are happening, and to probably go ahead and change those, patch those out. You could do a ton of interesting things. Now I know probably this specific video has been a little bit difficult to follow, simply because a lot of background knowledge was required. If you're interested, check out SecurityTube iOS Security Expert. I talk about all of these things, class dump, looking at the return values, the different methods, how iOS applications are composed, and a bunch of other things there. Have a look and see if this is something you would like to take up. Okay, so if you want the anti-piracy demo iOS app, the slides and a bunch of other things, please tweet or register for the Sgde. Now note, you require at least an iOS device running 5.11 or greater, even 6.01 the latest iOS would do, but your device would have to be jailbroken so that you can load my application, right? That's all for this video. Thank you.